20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, we're live. You know, I think I'm gonna put on my headphones really quickly, and then we should probably check to see if make sure our comments coming through.
All right.
Because you know how the internet is, and live streaming can go sometime. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. It's been a long day already.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if you can still hear me.
I can.
Okay. So you can hear me pretty good? Yay! Good. Oh, let me make sure I can hear you. Great. Sorry, we're doing the sound check live. We actually usually sound check a little bit before, but I'm running a little bit behind time today because I am actually homeschooling. In addition to, I'm so glad. In addition to Dunkin today, but I'm so glad that that's almost over with. And we're almost into June, and people will be graduating. My daughter is graduating from school, so that's pretty cool. Still with you, Molly?
Oh wow. I'm still not done cooking for today because I'm trash.
Well, we're gonna have a great show today. We have RC Curtwright, which is he's an extra Jehovah's Witness activist. We have quite a few activists actually lined up. We have another extra Jehovah's Witness activist in a couple weeks, and an ex-Mormon who's also an activist and has her podcast. She'll be coming on, and this is our Pride Week, or not week, it's a month, all month long. So we'll be celebrating Pride. And if you can look, I attempted a Pride Week, but it's not Pride, y'all. Look at Molly's. Molly's is this way. Molly's is a lot better. She actually has the right colors. I messed up and I just got creative from there. So I don't know. So we'll be doing. Thank you. So we'll be celebrating Pride. We even have a new intro that we're going to play at the end of our live broadcast today to commemorate, if I can talk, Pride Month. So without further ado, RC, what are you doing? Besides, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just.
You caught me yawning at 7 a.m.
We all gotta look. I went to Tim Hortons to give me some coffee today, which I never buy coffee because I feel like buying coffee. I should make my own coffee. But yeah, I needed it today. We all kind of low energy. Come on, look at Molly over there yawning. Girl, stop before you give me the start.
Oh my gosh, I just saw the bottom of the mug. That's great.
Wait, did you see the fact?
Yeah, I saw that, but when you tipped it back and the bottom has the bottom's doing this, that's wonderful.
Open people up.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
When she's talking to me, she's usually drinking that cup, and I'm like, I know you. Hope you're not talking to me, Miss Molly, with flipping me off or whatever. RC, thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you because. Can I give a little backstory before you give your story?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't remember how RC and I actually crossed paths online. I can't tell you that story. I wish I had a really fuzzy, good feel story.
I know.
Do you?
Yeah, it was Worldview Discussion Group, which was basically.
Oh yes.
Most like the word the Christians that most want to argue and the atheists that most want to argue all in one group, and very rarely is anybody listening to each other.
Right, really shouting past each other.
Poor Spencer comes in because she's in between. She's not like, I'm a Christian here to argue with everybody. She's just trying to figure stuff out. And of course, the Christians are all mad at her because she won't toe the line as a Christian.
Yep.
The atheists are all mad at her because she's not an atheist, so she's not like throwing away all of the Christian ideas fast enough for them to be happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's where I was 3 years ago. She's figuring stuff out.
I
So
totally remember
that's,
that,
you
RC.
know, so that's how we ended up becoming friends.
Yeah, and I totally remember that. Do you remember my posts and they were getting taken down? It was really until I discovered that some groups and some groups like it. Christians make those groups in their effort to evangelize and not
They're
actually
trying to, yeah.
and so I was caught unawares. I'm thinking like, oh, this is worldview. We can just talk about whatever, because I mean, or anything goes. Not exactly.
Oh.
Uh-oh, I thought it was me. I'm glad it's not me. This ought to be interesting. Yeah, well, I'll talk. Yeah, I'll talk more about how Spencer and I met while she's trying to figure that out. Do you guys normally wait or?
I hear and see you. So.
Oh, there she is.
Whoa. Y'all disappeared too off screen.
That was funny.
Okay, so yeah, so I think RC, why don't you give us a little bit about your story, and then we'll talk more about how you and I crossed paths.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as the religion piece, I challenged my mom to prove that Jehovah was real when I was 7, and when she, I didn't lose you guys, did I? Okay, cool.
No.
Okay. I'm not used to this fancy magic. Where my screen. Okay.
You're missing your pulse up.
Yeah. So I challenged my mom to prove Jehovah was real when I was 7 years old, and then I debunked her, and she started crying. So that was the beginning of me as a kid realizing that I was going to have to make all of this make sense for myself to keep my family happy and to stay a witness and just to keep my whole world functioning. I was going to have to figure this out. And when I was 19, I was giving talks on creation and the miracles of the Bible. And when I got married and got older, I started finding all the flaws in my talks. I started finding the flaws in a lot of the ideas and learning things about argumentation and logical fallacy and the way the mind works and some of our biases and things that we bring to the table, these heuristics. And I just started spotting them in my talks and then in the literature, and eventually it all came apart. And when I was telling my parents what I was going through, my mom said, I have seen this coming since you were 7 years old that day. So yeah, when I ran into you, Spencer, I kind of looked at it not like this, to me, that from the Christian perspective, it's kind of like, oh, we got to save this person. From my perspective, is once it starts to unravel, it's inevitable. And so I just want to be kind of at your side for the process, not tell you this is where you've got to get to, this is what you should believe. I'm the smart guy because I did the research, and you have to take it this way and accept this and accept that. It's more like, okay, what is she thinking about today? You start messaging me with this or that, and I'm just, I give you somebody to bounce it off of. Because the last 2 years that I was in, I didn't have anybody to bounce it off of. I just had to sit there and think about it by myself with nobody to talk to. So that's kind of, how we ended up meeting each other, was because I saw somebody who was in the same position I was in at one point.
And here's the thing. One thing I recognized about RC, one, that he was not pushy. Two, he was more interested in me thinking than me actually giving me the answer, which to me, I've encountered very few people like that in my life that is more interested in the journey than actually getting there. And I probably a teacher I think I had like that, and maybe a one friend other before. And the reason why that intrigued me so much is because coming out of two belief systems, the Jehovah's Witnesses and then Christianity, you are always taught that you have to know the answer, that you have to study to the answer. And here's this person telling me well, the answer may not be that important in the, in the grand scheme, or the journey might be more important than the destination, and or maybe there's not a real destination at all. And I'm thinking like, well, what are you talking about, RC? Where are we going with this? He added me to a philosophy group. Now, I took a philosophy course in a collegiate philosophy course in college. I had to drop out the school after that because my parents was freaked out about some of the philosophical concepts. I mean, I was just excited about learning some new things. Not that it was particularly philosophy; it was just a worldview and things I had never learned, like Plato's cave. And I mean, you don't learn things like that in a cult. Socrates, and just learning new ways of thinking like that. I thought that I was pretty much a thinker, but I didn't realize that I had not even scratched the surface. So when I met RC, he put me into a philosophy group. This particular group, I forget it, ran by Steve. He's really uh, just spot on with a lot of his analysis and things that he thinks. But what I love about that group is that as high sounding and as lofty as things can be for me sometimes, because I consider myself a layman in a lot of areas, is that they were willing to help me.
Yeah. It's not a place for people to set you up and then go, gotcha, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's actually a place for people to try to get everybody to try to get sharper in the way they understand the world. It's a different environment.
And it's different worldviews. Sometimes they clash, but I think maybe we're in an environment, in a world where philosophy thinking, I won't say critical thinking, but thinking persons, facts, all this kind of stuff is just we're living in a world where it just seems like every day is not something that is praised or looked upon as something good. I say that because I go back in time and I read arenas where people would debate in big forums and debate and talk about their worldviews and would be totally fine. Now you talk about worldviews and people be really ready to almost shank you and kill you over it. I mean, it's not.
I mean,
It's volatile.
I think today we're in a situation where most of us get our views handed to us as kids, and it's rare that we deviate from that, and the people you find that deviate from what they grew up with tend to also be, in my opinion, they tend to also put a lot of thought into things, because it takes thinking out, quote, thinking outside the box. Like, it takes thinking outside the box to get away from whatever you're raised with, whether it's like raised politically in a certain part of the United States, raised religiously, even raised to value, a certain kind of work over another kind of work, and then decide, oh, I'm not going to do what my dad did. I'm going to do something else,
Right.
It's hard. A lot of people don't make that leap.
And I had to make that leap twice, and I don't count myself as some person that has only done that, because I know a lot of people. I think that with me, RC, I came out to Jehovah's Witnesses knowing that I did not want another religious belief system. I think pretty much when ex-Jehovah's Witnesses leave, they pretty much know that they don't want to adopt another belief system. But at the same time, I fell in a trap. Like, I felt like that I needed to be doing something.
Yeah.
Whether it was preaching, whether it was helping people, whether it was, I did not know how to just stand still with my thoughts. And because I think sometimes it probably would have scared me, some of the things that I was thinking, and I'm just was used to the treadmill of being a Jehovah's Witness, the go, 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 and you're not really doing a lot of thinking.
Yeah, I was listening. There was lots of little inputs that came into my process of waking up, but one was this podcast called Hidden Brain. He was talking about how people get roped into like ISIS and very extreme, like, terrorist organizations. And he said there's this human need for transcendence that we're not talking about. And I feel like that, as a JW, was a mirror on myself, because, you know, their beliefs are very cultish. They don't want to push violence, but they do have you ready and excited to watch 7 billion people be, you know, murdered. It's just not you doing the murdering, it's Jehovah. But you're, you know, they train you to be like, I shouldn't say they train you, but it's completely acceptable. You know, when you have like, you leave a door and somebody says, "Oh, wouldn't you love to be in front of this house at Armageddon and see what happens to them?" You know,
right.
like you are
Exactly.
kind of like almost as bad as some of those people that will actually kill for it, because you're excited about other people dying. And this need for transcendence is like, I want to become more than just a human. Like, I want to outlive my death. I want to be something that's bigger than what I am, so that I can just go on and, you know, whatever, however you try to come at it. And I think that's what, one of the religious mindsets that for me, I had to come to terms with, because it does give you a bit of a savior complex, doesn't it? To be a witness.
Exactly.
You
And that's
get
what I was
out.
getting there. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
you
was,
get out and you just start looking for other people with problems or other situations and things. And
mhm.
it's not bad. You know, it's not bad to have that in you, but you've, to be able to pull back and have some self-awareness of how this is actually about me and about how I want to feel about myself, and not about helping other people.
Mm.
And to get some self-awareness to decide the right and best ways to help other people, and not just do it for, you know, my own gratification either.
But you said something
You know?
interesting about how some ideas were handed to us. The idea of transcendence, wanting to be other, wanting to be otherworldly, supernatural, whatever. I don't think I would have innately felt that way, RC, had my mom or father had not given me some skeleton of that. Like you meaning with childhood indoctrination. I mean, when you think about religious seem to survive because I don't want to say indoctrinate, because I know that could be offensive. We have some Christians I can see on the line today, but that you train up a boy from infancy with all of these teachings, according to the Bible, that you try to instill your values, and mostly religious values, in children. And I think Jehovah Witnesses go a step beyond even that. When you want to talk about ISIS, not to compare them to ISIS, but the ideology, the fervence, the zealous, that they have for their ideology sometimes can be misconstrued or even looked at as that, because I know my husband talked about the fact that, in his training, and it is definitely training, growing up as a child, that his mother and father would play the My Book of Bible Story tapes over and over, like
Yeah.
all throughout the night, all throughout the day. So he heard not the Bible, which, in some cases can be considered, indoctrination, whatever, but the theology or the ideology of the witnesses play over and over and over. And it kind of reminded me of a study I had saw and about those dissidents in China. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
it
that was
just
in one of the books that I read. Influence by Robert Cialdini talks about how they got the American troops to turn against the US. Is that what you're
wow.
talking about?
No, but that's fascinating.
Yeah, but it ties into what you're saying with the repetition. Well, what they would do is they would get one of the troops to just say anything negative about the US, anything. And he would just say one thing, right? And they'd say, now we want you to write it down, just write a paragraph. Okay, now we want you to read this paragraph out loud. And they would
Hmm.
broadcast it to all the prisoners. And they would reward different prisoners for saying bad things about the US, so that they would eventually have tapes and tapes and tapes of their friends reading their paragraph out loud, played over the loudspeaker. And what would happen is there's this thing called self-consistency bias, which is like, you think you're consistent. You want to be consistent with your past self. So it's like, well, I already said one thing bad about the US. Maybe the US isn't so great. Maybe I could come up with one other thing.
Hmm.
And you do that, right? And then eventually what your mind wants to do is say, well, why would I do that? Maybe I don't like the United States as much as I think I do. And that's how the brainwashing, incrementally takes place. And I was thinking about, when I was reading that, I was thinking about how it is like this barrage of information as a witness.
Right.
And for me, I was at a point where if I stopped going to meetings and stopped studying Jehovah, the whole feeling of Jehovah and the concept just disappeared within like 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I started going to meetings and studying again, it all kind of came back. And, they talk about make Jehovah real to you. And I was just like, how odd. Like, I don't have to make gravity real. I don't have to make gravity real to me, do I? I don't have to make the sun real. I could be locked in darkness for a year. I would still feel like the sun was real and know that when I get out, it's
That it's
going to
gonna be
be
there.
there. But I stopped reading the witness literature and don't go to meetings for 3 or 4 weeks, and something wears off.
Well, that's kind
You
of,
know?
I'm gonna take a step further, and I hope I know I'm gonna get some of these Christians is gonna get mad at me, but I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I felt the same way about the Bible. I devoted myself religiously to read the Bible, sometimes because of the hyper religiosity that I experience. I could be studying the Bible 12 hours a day. Um, and that is not to brag, because that was super unhealthy when I go back and look at it. But once I stop reading the Bible, and here's the thing, they kind of Christians of certain of other a lot of denominations kind of give you the idea that if you stop reading the Bible, that somehow that you'll feel disconnected from God. As a matter of fact, they'll tell you when you feel disconnected from God, oh, you need to get in the Word, you need to start praying, you need to start reading the Bible. However, when I stopped, um, I didn't feel I would feel that distance, that disconnection from God, like you would say. So we actually talked about brainwashing before. I mean, and types of brainwashing. RC, do you think that Jehovah Witnesses employ a program of brainwashing as if they're deliberate? Like there are some cults, arguably, who have some really weird forms of actually doing just that, or if
I
they
don't credit them with being intelligent enough to have researched and done this all intentionally. Especially not after reading Ray Franz, and I think that if you look at a lot of human organizations, there are aspects of the stuff that you see from the BITE model,
Mhm.
but the more an organization becomes fundamentalist, and what I mean by fundamentalist is like, we are right, everybody else is wrong, we have the truth, and people, you have to accept it. You just have to accept it. Like, if you don't accept the truth, you're going to die. We have to save you. That creates this sort of thing where, back in the 80s when you had the great apostasy, when, 1975 happened, and then Ray Franz left and he wrote his book, and 1981 was when they said, hey, guess what? No more disassociations. If you disassociate, it's the same as disfellowshipped. You can't talk to your family members. Up until that point, you could just write your letter, disassociate, leave, and you were just a worldly person. And you could still have your family and your friends, and they could choose to talk to you. And you could go live your life. You could go celebrate Christmas. You could go become a, Muslim, whatever you wanted. And it wasn't apostasy,
Right.
because you had disassociated first before you changed. And they got rid of that. And they got rid of that, to me, because they were watching the numbers drop, and they're losing membership year over year. And they think, they are smart enough to say, well, what's happening? These people that are in are talking to the people that left.
Mm-hmm.
Let's cut that off. And I think to me, it's one decision on top of another decision, on top of another decision, on top of another decision. And so starting with about Rutherford is when it gets a real authoritarian.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's when the goal is, don't let people leave, don't let people change their minds, don't let people even talk to anybody or read anything that will let them change their minds. you just figure out how to make the rules fit. You start
Right.
figuring out how to do it. And the reason I think that it's kind of natural is you see, I mean, organic, I should say, is like you see similarities with like the Mormons, the leaders up there. And he's like, what if we're curious about Joseph Smith? What are we going to do? Are we going to go on Google? No, of course not. We know where to read about Joseph Smith.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same
is.
thing. It pops up over and over. Or okay, I'm gonna make a bunch of people mad. Apostate lies, right? Oh, apostate lies. It trains the witnesses to have this knee-jerk reaction, which is, I don't even need to read it, right? I don't even need to read it because I know what it is already. Well, fake news, right? Okay, well, I'm not even going to read it now. This is going to contradict my opinion. I don't even need to read it. I don't even need to consider the other side.
Right.
It's the same stuff. People invent and reinvent this stuff in different ways to get their idea out there and get other people to be so on board that they won't entertain the contrary point of view,
So speaking to that though, because I was going to ask you something else, but since you brought up fake news, I have to go there. I had a conversation with someone the other day. Journalism has been, I was recruited to journalism at Wayne State. Everybody know the story, and I'm salty about it. I couldn't go. The elders, blah blah blah. It's just the way our particular religion, the Jehovah's Witnesses, highly discourages higher education. If you're a person that join our line and are not a Jehovah's Witness or ex-Jehovah's Witness, truth. Now I know that's a really big, tall order to even ask about, but how do you think we prevent people from, for instance, we have Holocaust deniers, we have flat earthers, it's people who like to rewrite history.
I make people upset because I will actually sit there and say, the anti-vaxxers have a point with this, and that, and we should get more educated on these subjects so that we know how to talk to them. And I have friends who say, fuck the stupid anti-vaxxers. We don't need to understand their logic. They're wrong. And I'm like, but if you can't make their argument for them in a way that you are representing exactly what they're saying rather than straw manning them, then you don't actually know the reasons why they think the way they do. And you're just talking at them, Right. And I'm not saying that we need an army of people to confront anti-vaxxers, but if you care about making fun of people and mocking them, like, look, I've definitely had fun with flat earthers. Yeah, I just don't see any advantage I just look at it, they're so far gone and lost sometimes, because it doesn't matter what you bring up, they just explain it away. You could say, would this prove it to you? Yes. And you show them, oh no, actually that doesn't prove. So there's no point, right?
Yeah.
But I do think, generally speaking, if there's something important that results from the opinion, like the vaccine things, I think is important, right? Religion on some level, I think, is important, especially with the emotional trauma that causes you to realize you don't believe in God. It's like grieving a loss.
Yeah.
If I see someone who is beginning that grief cycle, I will interact with them, but I have to understand where they're coming from. I can't stand there from a place of superiority and just be like, oh, you stupid person, don't you see? Don't you see it's not real?
It's so hard to be in a spot.
And on top of it, I see, the thing is, I'm agnostic enough that I don't want to say none of it's real, none of it at all possibly is real. And I just can't back that up. Now, I could definitely tell you that I don't think there was a flood, and I could tell you that I believe in evolution, and I don't think that we're 6,000 years old. I don't think there's any kind of divine intervention. And I know that if people pray to answer cancer prayers, that statistically they're no more likely to cure the cancer than the people that didn't pray. I understand all those things, but that bigger picture, when someone feels connected to something and they can't describe the connection and they don't know where it comes from, I understand that. I've had that feeling.
Right.
And they're going to have to contextualize that in the way that makes the most sense to them without somebody else coming in and telling them how to contextualize it. But if they're curious about the science around evolution, I can give them that, if they're curious about some of these other things,
The most common misconception, and maybe Molly, you can jump in here, is that people, when they lose faith, that they wanted to somehow. Like, if let me tell you, I stared at a wall for 3 months in tears because I could not force myself to get back in that spot of belief where I was before. It was so much easier for me to go through life throwing my problems on an imaginary person or a person that I couldn't see or on a God than it was for me to actually figure out my life, figure out who I was and the world around me, and to accept the inevitable that people die and they don't come back. That was
Right,
really hard for me. Go ahead, Molly.
right. So here's the deal. I did not want to become an apostate. I did not want to become an atheist. I did not want to lose faith. It just organically happened to me as I grew up and reached the age of reason and realized that, oh, but wait. So you want to tell me that if I pray, God's plan will change in my favor? Or you want to tell me that God is weak enough so that my whims are that important to him to go out of his way and get my, dreams and wishes to come true, or something like that. And it's traumatic, like RC said. It's very traumatic to lose faith. It really is. And mainly because, and yes, atheists actually commit suicide in higher percentages, but that's for a reason as well. It's because, and I shared that article and the video on the Dunkin religion page. We don't have too many posts, so y'all can look at it. And basically, it's about exactly this. It's that atheism does not allow you. So when you lack belief in God, you're not allowed to just say, I prayed on it, or I read the relevant Bible verse on it, and now I'm good. Atheism, by its fundamental thing that you don't have a higher power than, forces you to be self-reliant and self-sufficient, and that's hard to do, especially when you're indoctrinated as a kid, like we all were. And I also wanted to say about, Plato's cave and all that. We are actually taught that in school in Hungary, so it's not like a separate class where
Well, I grew up in Detroit public. I grew up in the Detroit public schools. We hardly had books, so no, it was no Plato's cave in Detroit public schools. But I mean, I'm just saying that I was on the lower end of education in the nation versus probably yours. Hungary is probably way more progressive than where I grew up.
Education-wise, I guess we are. Like, we Plato, Socrates, Molière, Camus, who else? Thomas of Aquinas.
Okay.
They are all like compulsory, mandatory literature that Hungarian kids read, mainly in high school and in like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Even if it was mandatory, my mother would have had a way for me to opt out. There would be no way I would be studying at that young.
You can't opt out here. It's mandatory education. Even JWs get it. I got it as a JW, and I wouldn't have had an option to opt out. And that's something
that's amazing, though, because that teaches you how to think about stuff
at a very young age.
And actually, you know what? I'm kind of grateful about that in Hungary. Homeschooling here doesn't have a culture. It's not like you can pull out your kid from school. They need to be very sick. You need to be very sick. You need to prove that you have a teacher that can handle it at home, they still need to go in and write all the bigger tests. So there's no fucking way that a kid gets out of the mandatory prescribed education here. And that's something I appreciate because, as you can see, we're still a Christian nation, Christian, because
I just wanted to go to the comments here. Arlene, I saw you earlier. Hello. She said she's being educated. She is. Thank you for coming on our line. I want to go to Teresa here. I do want to answer your question here, but I do want to proceed it by saying that we are not Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm not sure if this question is directed to us, but I do have a response. Your question is, if the governing body sent letters to the congregations and said, y'all need to commit suicide in order to see paradise, new light, with the mind condition of Jehovah's Witnesses, would y'all willingly do that?
yes,
I would point people to John Cedar's survey he did about 3 or 4 years ago, where he asked Jehovah's Witnesses directly in a survey whether or not they would take appeal if the governing body would ask them to do it. And you would be surprised at some of the responses. Oh my God, it was overwhelmingly them saying that they would take the pill, and they would. You had one person, and I'm gonna have to find that survey, and I'm gonna link it here below, that stuck out this to try to reason. Well, I wouldn't take the governing body wouldn't ask us to take the pill, and that you could tell that they were trying to think it a little bit.
It's bad for us. Right. I think if, for my personal opinion, the doctrine would be changing too fast, that people would think something was up if they said to all go kill yourself. And I think there'd be enough people that would question that. On the other hand, I think just take this pill and we're not going to tell you what's in it and trust us. A lot of people.
Yeah. They did. I'm going to see if I can look that up. Go ahead.
About RC, you mentioned that you don't think they are smart enough to do the, mind control on purpose. I kind of agree. But on the other hand, I still have people who they are stalking my Facebook, and they recently realized that I'm one of those ones who they will never gonna get back. And they contacted my memorial, and they saw our live on memorial commemorating those who are lost to suicidality, the blood doctrine, and all that. And well, they were like, what's that about? And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna beat around the bush with you. That's apostate material. Boom. That's it. I was like, yeah, that's
a commemoration. How did they react?
They were like, oh, and they said, and why would you do that? And then I was like, well, because this and this and this. And I linked to the, the ARC, the Child Victims Act in New York, and all that. And then I quoted the Shepherd the Flock of God book at her, and she was like, that's apostate-driven lies. And I'm like, yo, I'm literally quoting your own governing body and your own literature. Yeah. How much more JW confirmation you need that and she's like, but you were there when my father was on the judicial committee for being abusive. And I'm like, yeah, I was. And what happened? He was placed in another congregation and stripped off his elder privilege. That's it. Big fucking whoops. He should have gone to fucking prison though.
Wow.
So we're approaching the last part of our string, and there's a couple things I wanted to run by you, RC. One, I want to talk about if you are doubting, if you have doubts, what you can do. Okay, I don't really have this down pack. It's just I feel like it's a little path that I've just kind of paved myself.
I mean, step one is to realize if you're doubting, you're fearful and you feel guilty. Mm-hmm. You feel like something is wrong with you, and this is my own fault, And I think I shared this, when I was with my ex-wife when we were still witnesses, and she would say stuff. And she once said, in the paradise, Jehovah will fix my brain, and then I won't have these doubts. Okay, that's gaslighting, folks. That's what that is.
Mhm.
You've been gaslit by the organization. You've been told that you're a bad person if you can't make it all make sense. How do they convince you of this? Well, they tell you that Satan is responsible for your doubts and you're making room for Satan. Okay, well, first of all, if that's the case, why is it when you're doing your own personal study and trying to strengthen your faith that half the time your doubts come from Watchtower literature?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that Satan? Is that Satan putting doubts in your mind? No, that's the literature not making sense. The second thing
Right.
they tell you is that you have a lack of a spiritual routine. Okay. Well, if your spiritual routine is all built up, then it's all going to work out. Okay. Well, number one, I got there and I still doubted. Lots of us have been there and we've still doubted. And that's, for me, was when I decided, there's got to be something to this, because I'm doing everything. I'm in a Russian congregation doing all these assignments. My wife's pioneering. I'm a servant. Like, we are there and still doubting. Okay. So some of us have been there, and let me tell you what, it doesn't go away just because you're doing everything.
Mhm.
The only thing that maybe helps is consistently brainwashing yourself with propaganda from the organization 1 to 2 hours a day and pushing things out of your mind. And then the third thing they tell you, right? Wait on Jehovah.
That's a big one.
That's basically thought suppression. That is, I
It is.
got this thing in my head and I'm going to put it in the back of my mind and ignore it. And you do that enough times and you will get physically ill. You will feel like you're at a war with yourself inside your head.
Dissonance, right?
Yeah. Let me tell you, I cannot even tell you how many anxiety attacks I had. And the moment I released the pressure and just looked at everything, and it took me weeks, it was like, well, now I don't have this war in my mind. And I was super sad, because now I was grieving the loss of Jehovah and the belief of all that. But I had relief because it wasn't fighting with my own mind anymore,
Yeah.
And I think that's the first thing I would say is, if you're feeling guilty, you're feeling fearful, or if it's creating a bunch of internal tension, don't take that as a sign that you're wrong to be investigating your doubts. And they want you to think that is all signs that you're being manipulated by Satan. The fact of the matter is that uncomfortable emotions are there sometimes to move us to act. Anxiety is telling you something's wrong and needs to be fixed. Fear is telling you that there's something wrong and you need to be alert to the danger. This guilt is placed on us only because we've been told this is bad. And if you take a moment to ask yourself, is it bad? For example, is it bad in the beginning of the Bible Teach book that we tell other people to question their religious leaders? Right? So if they shouldn't feel guilty for it, why should you feel guilty for it? So I mean, that would be the first thing, is you've got to realize that there are going to be uncomfortable emotions, and those emotions are not signals that the governing body is right. Okay. Those emotions are signals of just the process, a difficult process you're going through. The second thing I would say is, you've got to, the fundamental, I mean, there's a couple things. One, learn about the BITE model of mind control. Stephen Hassan's BITE model of mind control. JW Facts is the other resource that I went to, and John Cedar's channel eventually. But the other thing is, look, if you're afraid and you go on JW Facts and he quotes a bunch of Watchtower articles, go on the Watchtower online library and find the quotes. I mean, that's what I did. I did not trust that man.
I had this fear of being wrong. I had this fear of losing everything. Like, everything was riding on this one thing. Like, if I if I was wrong about this, that I was wrong about everything. And
Yeah.
I
Right.
just wasn't ready to take that leap.
And
But
there's enough.
RC, can you talk to us about since this is Mental Health Awareness Month, because you talked about how dissonance can make you sick.
Yeah. You know, I watched one documentary about it's called An Honest Liar, and it was about a bunch of bizarre different beliefs and stuff. And I saw a lot of myself in it. And I was laid up for 4 days straight. I had such a knot in my stomach. I was so sick that I literally could not eat for 4 days. I
Wow.
couldn't fall asleep at night because my mind was racing. And, you know, I remember the thoughts, right? Like, well, if this isn't true, what's the point of anything? You know, maybe I should just end it. I remember having those thoughts, you know, and I'd had those thoughts when I was a teenager. Same thing. I was going through a lot of questions about things, and if I wasn't true, I would lose my family.
Right.
And I spent a lot of from age 14 to say 17, off and on dealing with suicidal ideations. And it lessened because at 19, I was appointed as a servant, and I jumped into the Russian field, and I went to Ukraine, and I just buried any question or doubt with being a super zealous witness. And as soon as it started to all unravel again, for me, that was where my emotional issues came from. But I really do think that being caged into any kind of system where your mind is at a war with itself,
Right.
is going to exacerbate any other pre-existing issues. You know, I'm prone to kind of an uneven mood already to some extent, and to have all of that on top of it, it was overwhelming at points. You know.
Right. When we're talking about suicide, I think one of our viewers mentioned it earlier about the witnesses. Hey, Molly, you're back.
Yeah. Sorry.
Mentioned suicide. I personally know of 3 extra Jehovah's Witnesses who have either attempted a suicide or have one that has been successful. A family friend of ours. So I do remember him going through the waking up process, and I do remember myself going through the waking up process, and my family coming home from the meeting one day, and I'm almost, wanting to take my life. So
Right.
waking up,
Yeah.
the waking up process. As a matter of fact, and I'm gonna let Molly take us out for the last part of the stream, we're actually reviewing a series that focuses on a person actually waking up from a harmful and very strange belief system. It's the Myerism cult within the path, and you are actually one of our panel members for it. The character that I'm speaking of is Eddie,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
so we're not going to give it all away here, but he wakes up from it starts off with a very stark realization that what he believes may not necessarily be reality.
Yeah. And about suicide, I
Yeah.
missed that bit because
Oh, go ahead.
apparently work calls are supposed to be after 4 p.m. Anyway,
Well, work people when we work, they think we always on the clock. So
mhm. Anyway, so about suicidality, I myself attempted multiple times as I was waking up, and right after I left, because it was like, if there's no Jehovah, if there's no Satan, if there's no, then who bears my guilt? Who bears my fuck ups? Then who is it that is responsible for me? And then you realize, ha, you idiot, you are responsible for you. And then it's like, oh,
right.
that's sure. And that's actually a very as if someone bashed on your chest, like, oh shit, I'm responsible for me. And then it's like, but how are you capable of doing that? because it's hard. It's actually hard to not seek the loophole of, oh, it's for Jehovah. Oh, Satan made me do it. Oh, God, this. Oh, God, that. It's hard because, especially if you're indoctrinated as a child, it's hard to get out of it. And, fake news and stuff. I'm gonna be real. If anyone says that if anyone says that someone who disagrees with them is someone you should not interact with, not engage with, and if someone says a certain type of media is not to be trusted, or they tell you they have the truth or the light or the one solution for your problems or whatever, run, disengage. That's a cult, or at least cult-like behavior, because and I've seen some XJW small amalgamations of people who are like that, who are like, no, you can't interact with them and then be here with us. And I guess they are still stuck in that mindset, but and on that note, if someone doesn't allow you to check out all the resources you want, all of them, they can give, like, a person can give another person advice, because you can have experience with a certain news source being unreliable or something, and you can say, yeah, I don't really trust them because of this and this report being inaccurate, and that's cool. But saying no, don't watch Fox News, or don't watch CNN or BBC because they are all lying, that's a cult, no matter how you slice it. And I mentioned all three of these channels because I'm not stuck with either. I check out all three of them, and then more neutral ones. And I think one of the worst things that happened, especially in America, is that the news became far too politicized and polarized. But that's a whole different conversation. So just in general, it's hard. It's hard waking up from religion, and it's hard to realize that all the good stuff and bad stuff that happens is not for a particular reason. It's just life. It's just you, and it's life, and it's just live what you do. And that's why, like RC said, going at someone like, no, God doesn't exist, does not work. It wouldn't have worked on me, so why the ever-loving fuck would I think that it will work on anyone else? Hell no, it won't, because guess what? Especially religious indoctrination is very heavy on the mind. It bears a big toll. So you need to, and that's what I do, is ask questions. Be like, oh, okay, so you think God saved you from your, say, alcoholism. How? Can you explain it to me? Because I want to understand. They will still, if they are intelligent enough, the other person will still sense that I don't agree with the statement, but at least they will see that, oh, okay, she's asking me to explain because she's genuinely interested. And that's what I do when I do cart crashes, though they are far from being crashes. I just walk up and act like, oh, hey, I'm a plain old Christian girl, and I think your doctrine is more close to the Bible than those nasty Catholics. And then, I kind of rope them in with that. They're like, oh, okay.
Well, that's very true. What you, RC, to pick it off back what RC said and what you're saying, I didn't find, my husband found an old email of me in a chat group with other Jehovah's Witness pioneers ragging on the apostates protesting. Like, why are they out there? They're lunatics. I was just going super far. I would not have been, even though I stand here now and I'm an apostate, I would not have, it was not the raving fundamentalists or the zealous ex-Jehovah Witnesses that helped me change my mind, because I didn't have the ex-Jehovah Witness community for many years until after I left. It was the kindness of someone else, because I had not been shown that. I thought I was right and everybody was wrong, even though I had thought the Watchtower was wrong, and in some areas, but I still thought I was right. I still thought I knew more than the Watchtower, even though I was still wrong. But it was the kindness of this other person on my job who happened to be a Christian. Now that I look at it, it was just something about her. It was that transcended what she was saying to me. It was because she genuinely cared, and not because she was trying to shove her religion down my throat. She saw me in a bad situation and she just wanted to be human to help me. So I think that's what we're going to talk about, because we're closing out now.
Yeah.
On the
I was
path.
just gonna say I agree with that. I'm less interested in converting anybody to where I'm at, but
Right.
more if they're trying to get a footing into something that doesn't make
Right.
sense to them,
Right.
then it's like, oh, okay, I'll talk about it with you if you feel like it.
I always say my goal with my YouTube channel and saying, yeah, if you ask me, I will always be like, yeah, I'm an atheist. What about it? And first of all, because atheism, or the word atheist, is still such a misunderstood and dirty word, and people just don't understand. It doesn't mean that I'm like a demon worshiper who's possessed by Satan or some shit like that. I'm just a person, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, whoever you want to believe in is cool with me, but if you knock on my door and try to proselytize at me, you're gonna get one foot up your ass, and I'm like, if you come up to my door with a Bible, I will come back at the door with a Richard Dawkins.
But they don't like when you talk back. If you start mentioning Richard Dawkins or anything else, they get upset. But they can rattle off all these apologists at you that you're supposed to know in order to get this deeper understanding of the Bible.
Another thing is that I always say, and I picked this tagline up from Mr. Atheist, or now he goes by Jimmy Snow, to be less innocuous, I guess. He says, my goal here, and I agree with that. My goal here with Dunkin Religion, and in my YouTube channel, and in my random tidbits on Facebook that I share, is not to preach or convert anyone. Hell no. It's just to destigmatize and to intercept bad ideas. When I post a Paul and Morgan video and say, these people have dangerous ideas, here's why. It's because I was Paul and Morgan once. I was like Morgan once, thinking that my sadness is from Satan, and thinking that my suicidality is from Satan, and thinking that everything that happened is Satan, 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 Satan. Oh wait, something good, Jehovah, Satan, 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 and I know how she feels. I was her once. So when I react to a Paul and Morgan video, I don't do that to drag them through the mud or something. I do that because I know they have a big following, and I want to
intercept bad ideas.
You're making
intercept the bad ideas.
The way
and just maybe, because they watch a lot of the videos people make about them, just maybe they will see me saying, oh, I was like you once, Morgan, and I think you're a beautiful person, and I like your singing voice. You are a talented performer. Why did you stop that? And of course, there are many reasons, but still, point is, I want to make it less stigmatized to talk about leaving religion, because it's hard. It's hard.
I call it making room. You make room for people to disagree with them by openly disagreeing yourself.
Right.
You're giving them the headspace to do it as well.
Yeah.
So you guys, if you are, as we say, have been saying rather all month through our honor and mental health awareness month, if you are feeling alone, if you're feeling like this is it, or you feeling like that the dissonance is getting too much as you are trying to recover from religion, there is actually a website that I'm going to put in below. It's called Recovering Religion. They have a hotline that you can talk to them and then you can deconstruct with them in a safe way. However, if you're feeling suicidal, um, call call 911. But
Mm-hmm.
if you feel suicidal and you need someone to talk to, the suicide prevention hotline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. That is a hotline that I know works well in the States. Um, Molly is still trying to figure out what works in Hungary because she's not really sure whether or not they have a chat line like they have here, where if you're
Yeah,
not wanting to call the suicide prevention hotline, you can also chat with a representative there and they can kind of, help you with your
right.
case.
And also just a suggestion for those, because we're all stuck in quarantine, so some females and some people are stuck in fundamentalist households right now when they don't necessarily want to be. Internet, it sounds stupid, but use it to your advantage. You can, open an incognito tab. For about $3 to $4 bucks a month, you can have a VPN, and then ain't nobody gonna track you, boo.
Or
You
or you can do like me. You could create a whole nother profile and sneak to a trusted friend like RC, because that's what I did. I say, hey
Yeah,
RC, I am having doubts. I need help. How can I not be found out on the internet? Can you please put me in this group? And that's
right.
real. That actually happened.
And
That actually happened. You don't want to. We do also have on the TGT advice for PMOs, which is pretty essentially the same. You want to cover your tracks.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
if you go to reddit.com/r/xjw,
Mm,
you can read all the stuff on the XJW subreddit it's public. So
that's
you don't have to be a member of Reddit, you don't have to have an account. You won't be able to comment, but you'll be able to see all the other
right,
people going through the same stuff and they're all interacting with each other
right.
and you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. RC, thank you for coming. I
Thanks
feel
for
like
having me.
we didn't even touch the iceberg of your story, or so how can we keep up with you afterwards? Because I know you got a YouTube channel.
Oh boy.
I saw the views.
Yeah, I'm trying to fire it back up if I can get some time. I didn't even think about that. You can definitely friend me on Facebook. You can find me in the XJW groups on Facebook. Occasionally, I will share videos that I've made on my Facebook wall, and I think Spencer ends up resharing them for me too. So
Of
that's
course.
nice. So yeah, maybe I'll come back later when I have something more substantial to
Your
announce.
last video was
Thanks
awesome.
for
Because your last video was awesome. I think don't get me wrong, I haven't watched so many videos, but I think I talked to you about the video that actually went XJW viral a little bit.
The
Well,
1975 one? That was
no,
the
that's
one
not.
that actually
That's an
got.
old one. I think that you did something really recent about. Why don't you tell us before I mess it up?
Oh
Butcher
boy,
it.
I don't know. I think I talked about that whole "Where else would you go?"
Yes,
Was that the one?
I
Right.
think so.
Yeah. It's funny when I look back at stuff, I'm like, if I did that again, I would do this, I would do that. Yeah.
That's the nature of videos on the internet. I mean, like once you do it on the internet, it is almost forever. People, screenshots, videos. I mean, it's always forever. I mean,
Yeah.
I cringe at my old videos all the time. I'm like super
Well,
cringe.
I've talked to
Yeah.
more Christians now, and I've thought about that word evidence, and I kept saying, what does the evidence say? What does the evidence say? And I thought,
Right.
I think more for me, the emphasis is on the ability of the individual to look at everything. That's what I
Right.
mean. But yeah, is interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So we thank you so much for joining us. And Molly, did you want to have the last say before we end?
Yeah. just wanna say, if you have like questions and if you have something you're interested in, search for it, really. And if anyone tries to penalize or like make you feel guilty about it, they are a malicious actor in your life.
Well, actually,
in my opinion.
I have someone is asking what is RC? How do you spell his name? I had this the entire time and didn't flash it one time. So that's how you actually spell his name. You should be able to find him really quickly on Facebook. I'm able to bring him up really quick. So just get the name of his spelling right, and then what we'll do is drop a link to his profile in our comments so that you guys can click on it. Yeah. So, and I don't think he wants to give his government name. So RC is probably pretty much.
It's Ronald Clarence.
It's
I go by RC because my dad has the same name.
So we want to thank you guys for joining us, and we're going to sign off and say goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for having me.